Alex, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Um,
This is so we got a bunch of people in the audience and currently being recorded.
okay, good. Do we have other participants yet?
Yeah. For those that are on the Trust Fund Advisory Committee, I'm gonna promote you to panelists. Please accept. All right, everybody. We're just waiting for a couple more members. We'll get started in a little. Steve, I know Steve Green might have been calling in, so if Steve, if you're on here, can you just raise your hand? I think at this point, I don't see any other members in the attendees. We do currently, oh, Deborah just came on. I will promote her. But I'll keep an eye out, and so if other members do come on, I'll bring them in as panelists. Um, with that, I will turn the meeting over. This meeting is being recorded, and we do have currently 20 attendees in the audience. I'll turn it over to Chairperson Stoller, who will um, go from there. So you, you got it. You good, Ben?
Yeah, I was just saying, who are we missing? I guess we're missing who are we missing?
We got Steve coming in as
Okay.
well.
Okay, great. All right, listen, I want to welcome everybody to the Open Space Trust Fund Advisory Committee. Advisory Board. Thank you guys for all the hard work you're doing and making time for this meeting. Really, the soup du jour today, the topic of the day is the project funding of the high school field improvements and providing a recommendation to the Township Committee. Um, in terms of kind of process, Alex, how do you want to work the process here? I know we were discussing about the open discussion, then going to public comments, and then that's. Do we do that prior to the vote or after the vote?
Uh, quite honestly, it can be done however you want it to be done. Obviously there should be an open discussion of this committee of what their recommendation may be, if any, to the township committee. Can certainly be opened up to the public for their comments then. And then I think the important part is that after that there is a sort of a consolidation of what a recommendation might be so that it can be voted on by the group.
Got it. Got it. So I would say uh, we have our open discussion now. We open it to public comments. Brief comments from anyone who wants to say something, and then we'll have a chance to obviously address any of the points we feel that need to be addressed, and then we can put it to a vote to provide a recommendation to the township committee to move ahead with this project, and whether we agree to fund it through the open space trust. Is that fair enough to everybody? Good. Alex, why don't you just do a roll call so we know who's so for just for the record.
Yeah, sure. Mike Langley,
Here.
Deborah Nevis,
Here.
Priya Patel,
Here.
David Cosgrove,
Here.
Josh Ryder,
Present.
Steve Green,
I'm here on the phone. I'll be joining the Zoom in a little bit.
okay, and Brad Jenkins. Don't see him in the audience right now either. Ben Stoller,
Present.
Matt Laracy,
Present.
and myself, Alex McDonald. Okay. So we have everyone in attendance with the exception of Brad Jenkins.
Okay, good. So just to begin, I want to begin. I sent a piece of literature to everyone that showed the field project and the playable hours. This was done internally, and it showed the playable cost per playable hour. That cost per playable hour from synthetic turf came in at around $98, and for grass natural grass, it came in at $371. So that was about a 3.8x benefit to going with synthetic over grass. It also meets all our needs for the playability of the fields. I want to see if there were any questions anybody had on that as well. Who's anybody? We had a chance. Everybody had a chance to review that study, and if anybody had any questions.
Ben, I'm not sure if I was reading it right, but it looked like factoring in the cost of the renovations, I thought I saw 142 an hour for the turf and 208 for the grass. Was I misreading that?
Yeah, you were. Everything was broken
Okay.
down to the lowest common denominator, which is the cost per playable hour, utilizing both of the either turf or natural grass. So if you look at the bottom where I had this red line circled around the cost per hour of usability, those are the numbers I'm referring to.
Okay. Got it. I apologize. I'm driving, so it's hard for me to look at it right now, but I'll take another look when I'm in the thing. But thank you.
Sure, no worries.
Quick question, Ben.
Yes, sir.
I don't, the playability figures, turf versus sod, versus sod. I don't know that that's within the realm of what we're considering here, other than the cost of the project itself. I mean, I don't think we make any rulings on whether this field, rulings in this committee, whether the field should or shouldn't be any particular type of turf. Correct?
Correct, correct. So this is, somewhat to the point of when we were pushing through, when we were lobbying for the Open Space Trust Fund, is that we would use recreation. We would open this to recreation. That's a great point, David, that you're making. So, as we look at this project, going down to that, externality of grass versus turf, I see your point. However, it's become a bit of a bit of a topic in town from an environmental side. So I just want to make sure we address all those different pieces. Uh, Breaking it down in such a way that we could actually analyze those costs is the only way I really know how, being a finance guy, to get down and put a measurement in there. But I agree with you in terms of the externality of looking at turf versus grass. It's whether the project makes sense for recreation, for the town writ large. That being said,
Alex, I
yeah,
wanted.
go ahead.
Sorry, Ben. Alex, I'm looking at the field project comparison from March 2nd that you sent around, Alex. Is that the wrong thing to be looking at? Because on the bottom of that first page, looks like I see a 142 to 208. So I just want to make sure that's not. Alex, do you know what I'm talking about?
You're on mute, Alex.
Hello?
Yeah, so this what Ben is referencing is the materials that were sent was the one that was sent
That
yesterday.
was
Uh,
the one we asked was the one that on the last meeting people asked to be updated to have all of the economics and all of the different pieces down to that playable hour. So that
Yeah. Okay.
you might have the one from the last one that did not go all the ways down to the playable hour.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Thank you.
Also, too, I have a statement from Nick Romano, who's the chairman of the Recreation Committee. I want to read that into the record. Should we do that now, Alex, or a little bit later?
I mean, you can do it at any point. Well, I just don't know if anybody else wants to say anything, or if you wanted me to, display that, analysis anyway for the group. So.
No, let me go ahead and read it, and then we'll jump back to questions. If anybody has a question, just raise your hand. But in the meantime, let me read this statement that Nick had asked me to put into the record. I first want to apologize. Actually, you know what? I'm getting old. I first want to apologize that a work obligation makes it impossible for me to be here in person this afternoon. I also want to thank my friend, Committeeman Ben Stoller, that's me, for agreeing to read my statement into the public record. My name is Nick Romano. I have served on the Recreation Commission for the past 20 years and currently serve as its chair. However, today I am speaking only for myself. I am saddened that the high school field project has turned into a political football. For the record, I am 100% in favor of this project. For the past 2 decades, Commissioner Drucker, Chris Drucker, and I have worked to secure more playable fields for the youth of our community. No one can argue the fact that we need more fields and better fields. As a longtime baseball, softball, and soccer coach, I have traveled throughout the state, and quite frankly, Millburn's fields do not come close to those in many other towns. As Recreation Director Chris Myers often says, quote, "We are program rich but field poor." This project is needed and long overdue. Nothing but good things happen when our children are given the opportunity to participate in sports. As a coach, I have often used sports as a metaphor for life. Sports teach humility, teamwork, dedication, competition, sacrifice, leadership, and accountability. They teach you how to back up when you are knocked down and how sometimes you can learn from a loss, more from a loss than from a win. The Open Space Trust Fund is a great way to help fund this project. The money is already there. Taxpayers do not need to be asked again. They already voted for it and approved it by an overwhelming majority. Many residents, including myself, support the referendum because we believe that it could help address our community need for more field space. Years ago, supporters of the Open Space Trust Fund said it would provide our town with opportunities like those provided by the county's Open Space Trust Fund. However, there is no county-owned property in Millburn where the County of Essex could build fields. Commissioner Drucker and I have explored that option in the past. The county has used its trust fund to build some of the best fields in the state, many of which are turf fields. When the Environmental Commission presented the Open Space Trust Fund to the Recreation Commission, it was clearly implied that these funds could be used for field improvements. When residents voted on this referendum, it was also understood that funds could be used for projects like this. Please do not create a bait and switch situation now. Our community is far too informed and engaged for that. There is no reason not to vote yes on this project, and there is no statute that prevents you from doing so. Vote yes, vote for Millburn, most importantly, vote for our children. Thank you, Nick Romano. And you know, I think that's a great statement just to have on the record here. And it also pushes towards what Dave Cosgrove said earlier, in that whether it's turf or natural grass really isn't the issue. The issue is it good for the community from a recreation perspective? And I tend to agree. Any questions? Dave, is your hand up?
Yes, it
Oh,
is.
okay. I'm looking for the little thing on the Zoom where you raise your hand, but that's fine. In person's fine. Okay, got it. All right, Dave.
So yeah, thank you, thank you. So yeah, folks, I'll kick this off a little bit to get to some thoughts that I have. I don't think there's any question at the township committee level or at or even in this committee that these fields are going to happen. There certainly is a dispute about and again, I don't think that's before this committee what type of turf it would or wouldn't be. The town clearly has the money. The town itself has the money to pay for this agreement. I think there's serious questions when you look at the actual ordinance as to whether money can or can't. Our money, open space money, can be used at all for this project. Doesn't mean the project can't go forward with town money. But the ordinance, the way it's drafted, putting aside Nick Romano's comments about how it was sold or how it wasn't sold, the reality is the ordinance speaks of acquisition of things. If you acquire a piece of property, and I've been using the Exxon station that I think is near and dear to some of the people on this committee. If we buy that Exxon station, then I think the money in this pot can be used to turn that into a field or to turn that into whatever we want. But this is not an acquisition here. So I think there's a legal question. Now, again, that legal question may be have something that has to be answered by the town's lawyer, because frankly, all this committee does is make a recommendation whether they think this money should or shouldn't be used, meaning the open space money. And the township ultimately makes that call and obviously does not, I know would not want to violate, the terms of the ordinance. So I think our question is, do we think it's a worthy project using the open space fund? I don't think we should use the open space money for this. It's the open space money. I think the bulk of the people in town wanted to see it used to buy a piece of land somewhere that might be in jeopardy of being developed, and turn that into something. Again, that Exxon station makes it, is an example, whether or not people on this committee agree. But I just don't think it's a good opening volley. I also think when I look at the financials that are set forth, we basically would be, giving all of the money away that the open space fund has for a significant period of time, leaving us hamstrung. I've seen comments that there's no project before this committee other than this. I think the Arboretum project is before us. The Exxon station project is before us. So I think there's plenty of projects that we're aware of. I don't think we should be looking at just one project. We should be trying to weigh what we want to do with this money and frankly, not deplete it. So there's no money there and there's nothing for us to do, next year.
Right.
But that's my 2 cents on this.
Those are all valid, great points, Dave. Not unfortunately, but in reality, we're not depleting anything. The bulk of the project, as we've identified it, is easily funded by the Open Space Trust Fund at a very minimal percentage of the annual tax raise. In fact, we have $2 million just sitting there. In terms of as we get going, I know there are a list of projects, including that Exxon station, which is dear to my heart. That's the one at the Vauxhall that I've been told by numerous people that on the township committee that we don't want to do. We could actually turn that into a nice pocket park. It could help for flood mitigation. It could be a great gateway into our community. The person who first introduced that project to me, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago, was actually Priya. And then the Arboretum project and such. This is not an all or nothing, guys. In fact, this is about 20% of our annual raise under the Open Space Trust Fund, actually about 23 or 24%. And I can defer to Matt Larissy to talk about that on a 20-year note, on a 10-year note, whatever the case may be. In terms of the legality, we're not here to talk to discuss. We're not lawyers. Actually, Dave is a lawyer, but we're not here to discuss the lawyering of it. If there is a problem with how it's written, that can be remedied at the township council level, at the township committee level, and such. I think we need to focus in on whether this project meets the obligations of this trust fund, and how do we move it forward to the township committee with the yay or nay. The other projects are going to get going quick and very quick and furiously. I'm sure I was talking to Priya today. We have a whole list of opportunities that we can get on the docket and get them moving. But this is not an all or nothing opportunity. And the land acquisition, the whole statement of land acquisition, we're going to have plenty of time to acquire that land. This is really what was communicated per Nick Romano's opening statement there, that we are looking at bringing fields. That's a definite need to our community right now. I'd like to hear from everyone too. I'd like to give an opportunity to Priya and to Mike and to Josh, and I think Brad and Brian. Are they all on now, Alex?
Yep, Brad's on now.
Okay, good. So let me just volley it around, and then we can go to maybe our mayor, and then to open comments, and then we can look at what we want to do. Priya, please grace us with your words.
Um, so really kind words from you, Ben. I think that for me personally, I look, I'm a mother of two kids who were three-season athletes, and I always heard complaints about the lack of fields in our town. And I know that it's a real problem. And I have talked to residents and I've talked to family members who live in town. I've talked to friends from high school boosters. And I know that the lack of playable hours is a problem. And it's something that I've heard at least as long as I've lived here, since 2015. And under New Jersey law, open space funds can absolutely be used to fund recreational fields, sports fields. And that is exactly what was advertised when I, along with other EC members, Renee Paparian, who was the chair at the time, when we did our public session. So we made it abundantly clear to residents that if you vote for this ballot measure, there will be tax money available to pay for open space, as many of us think of open space, which is, you know, land that has grass on it, that's undeveloped, that is used for passive recreation, such as walking and hiking, but also land that is used for organized recreation, athletics, etc., as well as historic preservation. And I'm a little bit amiss that the representative from historic preservation isn't able to join us today, because I would love to hear his thoughts on
He's
this
on.
project.
Yeah,
Brad's on?
sorry, Brad's on.
Okay, excellent. So I'm an appointed volunteer. So that is, I operate in that capacity. I'm not an elected official. Um, I will not be voting to recommend this project um, after reviewing the materials that have been sent to me by Alex and um, by others. But um, I will support this project if that's what the elected officials, the township committee members that have been elected. If this is the project that they feel the majority of residents in our town demand, then I will do my part to support what the majority of residents in our town want. But I will continue to advocate for the multitude of incredible projects that we have before us. Ben, you mentioned the former Exxon station, which I've lobbied hard for turning into a pocket park and an EV charging station. You mentioned the forest restoration project at the Arboretum. That forest is heavily impacted by beech leaf disease. So it's in need of restoration work. And I've also talked to our township forester, and she has a ton of ideas for developing green space in our town. We also have just a wealth of information in the open space and recreation element that was put together back in 2023, 2024. I think under the helm of, I think it was Frank might have been the deputy mayor at the time. But that is just such an incredible resource. I would encourage everyone that's attending this meeting to look at it, because it really does provide a great roadmap for this town. It addresses everything from fields to greenways to biking and walking and just all the various needs that residents have articulated. And, I just think that we have to continue working together in the best way possible. And I hope that this fund can always be a resource, and through good governance and transparent process and involvement of the community, it will continue to be that. So I don't know if I can say much more.
No.
So I'm going to pass the mic.
All right, Priya, always eloquent and absolutely informative, and thank you so much for that. Very, very helpful. Brad, you want to jump in?
Sure. And thanks, Ben. Nice to meet everybody. I don't think I've really met everyone outside of David because he usually sits on the HPC as well. Yeah, these are my first few meetings. Happy to be here and kind of learning about the Open Space Fund and the purpose for it and everything like that. From the Historical Preservation Committee standpoint, it really kind of depends what projects are out there from our view. I know there are some things that could be utilized in this perspective. Currently there's not anything that we have on our plate. There are some things. I know Zach's working on some things with preservation of and standardizing how we have the local like train bridges and the historical parts of that, using money to really kind of focus on what parts of our town have that historical aspect to it. But I mean, right now, I don't really know of anything from the HPC standpoint that we would be able to utilize funds from this for that. So from my perspective, in terms of what would benefit the community as a whole or as a majority, right now there really isn't anything from a historical look. There's lots of pieces throughout the community. There's lots of things that we could look to utilize this fund for in the future. But right now, I think the focus should be on whether it's recreation fields, whether it's turning the Exxon station into a park or something like that. But I guess just from my perspective, based off of what I've heard and learned from other members here, building on what David and also Priya said, hey, I'm a sports guy. I've played sports all my life. I have two young kids. I'm sure they will play sports in the future, and they would utilize these fields and they would get benefit out of it. But when we're trying to sell this to the community, is the majority of the community going to get benefit out of these fields? Are they going to see a large chunk of this fund being spent on something that not everybody's going to use? And I think David mentioned that is that the best look to spend a large amount of money towards something that only benefits families that do sports? I mean, not everybody does. We have a big big chess club here. There's people that use, the Taylor Park. There's things that they do, like not outdoor people that would be able to go and walk around or go and have benches, unless that's something that has been thought about with this. But it seems like if you're not a sports family or you're not utilizing the fields on a regular basis, is the benefit really there for them? And that's, I will go along with whatever the majority is here with everybody because I'm very new here. But that's just my 2 cents. And I do agree with the sentiment from David and Priya as well.
Okay, and another thing, thank you, Brad, and great to meet you, and I can't wait to meet you in person. You know, that's almost akin to saying that anybody with kids shouldn't live in this town or pay for the schools, right? So I just think, being more open to the needs of the town at large is really to be more you have to be more respectful, or not respectful. You have to know that there's a lot of people who live in town who don't have kids, but should we not put money into the school system? I don't think you would agree with that. So I understand what you're saying, but that's just a counterpoint. I think that when this was sold into the town, that recreation was by far the most talked about opportunity. And now it seems like we will be pulling the rug out from under folks who did vote for this, who will not have those recreational fields, just as if it was a different school project or something along those lines. But I respect your opinion. Listen, the bedrock of democracy is the ability to agree to disagree based on analysis. So let's jump to to Deborah Nevis. Hey, Deborah, how are you? You're on mute.
I know.
Okay.
It's Nevis, by the way,
Nevis.
just for your edification.
Thank
Um,
you.
Thanks for calling on me, Ben. So, I am here as a representative of the Environmental Commission. And I also had kids who grew up playing Little League, field hockey, lacrosse, so I understand the importance of the fields. I think, for me, the issue is proportion. And just, taking what you said and going and looking at the open space recreation element, just looking at the goals and objectives, there are 5 listed. 4 out of the 5 refer to parks, or environmental resources. 1 is for active recreation. So I think, in terms of the fund being spent, I don't think I think the amount that's being proposed is probably the concern for me. And I think if it were more proportional in terms of what the goals are from the element, then I would give it some consideration. But we talked a couple weeks ago about it being 50 or 60% of the fund, and I just can't give an okay to that. If it was much lower, then I think that would be something that I would certainly be willing to consider.
Understood. How are you quantifying what percent of the fund it is? I just want to, just so for my
Well,
own.
I'm just remembering the conversation, and maybe Alex, I don't know if you can put up, or Ben, you can put up the document that you guys gave us. It's the Excel spreadsheet, the Township Board of Ed Joint Fields Open Space Trust Analysis, and it has the financing estimates in it. I don't know if you can share that or not.
Yes, I think Matt Laracy, our CFO, is on, or Alex, if one of you guys could pull it up, the 10-year option, the 20-year option, what that
Yeah,
debt
yeah,
service looks like.
exactly.
Is that
Exactly.
Yep, let me do that.
Thanks. So while Alex is pulling it up, I'll just kind of explain how the financing works. The principle on something like this is we have a lot of options, right? We could just pay straight principal evenly over 5, 10, 20 years. That would be one approach. But we have a lot of flexibility within that. So we would be able to not pay principal at all for 3 years. And then the next 7 years, it would be pretty low principal payments. And that would be the plan if we had other projects that needed a lot of funds. So it's not kind of a set in stone financing schedule, right? And then if we didn't have a lot of large scale other projects, we could pay it off more aggressively, therefore decreasing the total cost of the financing. So there is a lot of leeway. Like even these numbers here, like let's say the 20-year, $342,000 a year, that could be a lot less in the beginning and then scale up towards the end when the fund has, $10 million sitting in it or $8 million sitting in it. So I don't think, if it's a project that we want to do, that the open space board wants to recommend, I don't think the cash is too much of a consideration at this dollar amount in terms of using up the whole fund in one swoop, right? I think we have the flexibility and ability to manage it.
Yeah. So Matt, if the annual, just for everyone, the annual collection's about $1 million on $213,000 debt service. That's about 20% of the annual collection. Is that correct? The right math?
Right, correct. And then, like I said, it could be a lot less in the beginning and then scale up depending on what we have going on. I mean, it's all pretty fungible. There's certainly a dollar amount where that would not be the case, where I would say, this is what we'd have to commit to. But considering the infancy of this fund, the fact that in another few months, before you know it, it's going to be next year, we'd have another $1 million in the bank. And the fact that we do have a lot of ability to scale principal, especially in the early years, there is flexibility there is what I want to make sure I communicate.
And can you just explain why it all has to come out of why the township's share, not the Board of Ed share, but the township's share, all has to come out of the open space trust fund rather than splitting it. And again, I'm not a financial person, and splitting it with the general fund or whatever you call it. There was a slide with that, but I can't seem to find it. I'm just wondering why everything has to come out of the open space trust fund.
Certainly, it does not need to all come out of the open space trust fund. I think the theory is that we raise these taxes already, so rather than raise more taxes from the same population later, then it would all come out of this fund. But it's certainly possible that we think we want to be a little more conservative with this fund and save the money, and you could fund half of it, or whatever the appetite was.
But at the end of the day, from a financial perspective, Matt, since the money is fungible, it's all coming out of tax dollars from residents, and these tax dollars have already been collected and are just sitting there. From an optimal standpoint, to optimize the cash flow, I would think it should come out of the open space trust fund, or am I barking up the wrong tree there?
And Matt, when you address that, just tell everybody here how much free cash the town has right now.
Okay,
Please.
so to Ben's point first is certainly from like a strictly financial perspective, the way my mind would think was we have funds available. If the appetite is to use them for this project, we would want to use that before raising new money. But I could see an opposite approach to that, or at least a more moderate approach where maybe you're meeting it halfway, just from a philosophy point of view, which isn't really kind of where I would make a recommendation either way, right? And David, we ended the year with about 10 million in fund balance, free balance after our planned 2026 budget. The town on the general fund side certainly has an immense amount of borrowing power, but they also have a lot of large scale projects coming on board. And really, like in my mind, the finance mind, it's all one pot of money that we're trying to use, right? And one pot is a little bigger, the general fund, where we have a lot more going on. And this pot is a little smaller, and we want to make sure we're managing it to get done what everybody wants to get done, these worthy projects. So my perspective is strictly on the finance side here. But there is a lot of flexibility either way, and you could certainly split it. It could be all out of one, all out of the other. And I'll recommend whatever is best once that decision is kind of made.
Right. And thank you for that. Thank you for that, Matt. In terms of the opportunity set, just so everyone knows how great of a CFO Matt is, we have a AAA credit rating. We just did another debt. It came in at 2.88%. We have borrowing capacity up to approximately 260 million or so. And we've taken down some debt recently to fund the paper mill, to keep them here, to rebuild town hall and some various other ancillary projects. I sit on the finance committee. I cannot reiterate enough to this team how good of a financial position our town is in. And being able to utilize the funds that we have optimally, to me, is always the best prudent approach to funding these projects. All right. That being said, why don't we jump to Deborah? Are you satisfied with those answers?
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Very good.
I had a question.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like there's some wiggle room. And
I just had a question, Deborah, to what they were just showing. Can we just get clarification on that?
Yep.
Ben, is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please. Go ahead, Josh.
I mean, obviously I'm not in finance either. I'm in sales. And I look at this as, from a sales perspective, and I'm looking at the numbers, and it seems to me that we're going to have $2 million in the fund before we draw any money off of it. And we're talking about is that correct? I mean,
we currently have $2 million sitting in the fund today as we speak.
And we're going to pull 200,000 out a year, or a little bit more than that. To me, that sounds, in the neighborhood of 10 to 15, if it's like 250,000, 10 to 15% of the fund, not 50, 60, 70% of the fund. I mean, I just want to make sure I understand the numbers correctly. Matt, is that what I'm seeing? Is we're talking about pulling around 10 to 15%. Is that the number that we'd be pulling annually?
I think that would be the low end. Would be the low end would be about 10 to 15%. But the point I wanted to make was if we're not doing a lot of other projects and we did have funds sitting around, we could pay it off more aggressively.
Understood. No, understood.
Right.
I'm just looking at your schedule.
It could go as low
What
as
you
that.
put up.
You're correct.
The
You're correct.
sake that we're talking 10 to 15. I mean, because I think there's been some information that's gone out publicly, and when the community is hearing. And someone grabbed me in the park the other day and said, "Hey, look, we're talking 60%." I'm like, "We're not talking 60% annually." And I just think people need to understand it. And Deborah kind of said it, like if it's less money, well, maybe it's a little more attractive to fund it. Well, is 10 to 15% a little more attractive to fund it? I mean, I think people need to hear that that's kind of what we're talking about here. We're not talking about 50, 60, 70 or rating the whole fund. I mean, like, this is a fairly small number. And maybe we have 85 or 80% of the money left for other projects. And I'll talk a little later, but I just wanted clarification. I thought that the community that's on here listening should hear and understand, like, that's the percentages we're talking of the fund. I think it's important for people to understand that. And I didn't mean to like hijack your session, Deborah.
No, that's okay. I think where it was coming from was at our last meeting. We were talking about doing like a 5-year loan or a 10-year loan, and then the numbers were much, much higher. So that's where that number was coming from, Josh, because we were talking about like maybe 50% at the meeting that was at the library.
Yeah, I
So
think
this seems, like, more reasonable if we're talking about 10 or 15%. Then that, to Ben's point, it's in the ordinance. That is what, how the EC was talking about it as one element. And that, seems doable. If we're talking about 50% of the fund, then I'm reluctant. But, and then the other piece, just going back to what Matt was saying and what Dave had asked is, how much money, is there a way to split it with the town, with the general fund? And it sounds like there is some money there as well. So, maybe we can, there's a way. I don't know that it's our job to do that, but maybe there's a way to work that out so that people feel like it's fair for everybody.
Yeah, Josh, just to
I'm
clarify,
done, Ben.
Deborah, if I may, just Alex, if you pull up that spreadsheet again, I think it's just important to understand this also, that last week we had been primarily looking at the 10-year bond, which was on the order of 550, I think, to start, and then it goes down, obviously. So that's where those figures were coming from. So if you average that out over the 10 years, maybe it's about 500 a year. If we look at the 20-year, obviously there's a lot more interest ultimately, but it's a very low interest rate. Probably averages somewhere around 280, right?
That's exactly right, Steve. That's 280.
So that's why you might have heard 55, 60% or something.
Okay. Excellent. Steve, do you want to stay on the mic and just go ahead and give your point of view?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I did prepare some notes, so if you'll give me a few minutes, I'll try to go through this. I think at the last meeting, many residents sort of passionately expressed their thoughts on the environmental and health concerns they had related to the turf fields. And certainly sympathetic to that, and appreciate the fact that all of those people came out to say that on the record. I think something that maybe didn't come up as much is just that this plan will clearly add outdoor hours for our kids, right? And regardless of which surface they're on, I think it's indisputable that having them outdoors, breathing fresh air, playing, is going to be better for them than if they're indoors. And regardless of how you feel about the environmental pieces of it, I think the outdoor time is valuable in and of itself, for the kids' health. So for that reason, I do support this plan. I think another thing that is a little bit lost in some of the conversations is that there's really two projects here that have been merged into a single project. There's a project to light the fields, and there's a project to turf the fields. the lighting part of it seems uncontroversial, right? I don't think anybody is suggesting that the lighting itself is going to do some environmental or health damage. If you look at the presentation given, the high school presentation, and I was just looking at it to confirm the numbers, but it looks like, I think it was, yeah, it's about 4 million of the total cost is going toward the turfing, and about 3.6 is going toward the lighting. The lighting, I think, has more benefits even for the open space element, in that it creates some passive walking areas that wouldn't have been available in the evening hours before. You know, that area is very dark at night, and you know, if you do light up that back field behind the high school, it makes it a little bit more welcoming, you know, especially if people are on the track and then they're going back there, or you know, after a football game or something, the high school kids are going to be back there. So I think there's a huge benefit to the lighting part of it, irrespective of how you feel about the turf part of it. And if you look at it that way, and I don't know if we can divide up the money, but if half of the money is being spent by Board of Ed and half of the money is being spent by the town, you can look at it as the half that's being spent by the town is purely the lighting, and the half that's being spent by the Board of Ed, it's sort of their prerogative to spend. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be cute here, but I am saying that I think that that portion of it absolutely makes sense for the open space part, because it probably, much more than the turf, it adds a lot of playable hours, it adds a lot of outdoor hours for the kids, and you know, I don't think anybody disputes the benefit of kids playing outside. So I am supportive of it. I also know, Matt, I was going to ask, I remember when we were talking about sort of the savings rate that we're getting on our million or 2 million in there, I think that was higher than the bond rate, right? At least right now. So, I mean,
A little arbitrage.
I mean, we're not really losing a lot of money on the interest. In other words, that's what I'm saying. So you know, my concerns last week were like, okay, you look at all the interest, it's going to be 1.4 million, but you know, provided we continue to have a nest egg in the open space fund like we do now, I don't think it's going to be terrible in terms of adding money to the overall thing. I think you know, the turf savings on maintenance is definitely notable. I will say from personal experience that, you know, it sort of ruins the softball, the soccer, I'm sure all of the seasons, when the kids can't get on the fields because, you know, it rained 4 days ago and you know, your field's still not working. So there's benefits to that. But I'm very sympathetic to the concerns, the environmental and the health concerns for people who are worried about that, turf wise. But there's a lot more to this project. There's a lot of lighting. There's a lot of fresh air for the kids. And, you know, given if we're talking about this 20-year bond and it comes out to, say, you know, 28% of our $1 million annually. And Josh, I'm not going to call it a percent off the 2 million, because we don't know if that 2 million is always going to be there, but there is going to be $1 million a year, and we'd be spending about 28% of that every year on this project. I think that's fine. The only concern I would have, the big concern I would have, is just that I don't want to lose the opportunity to acquire additional field space if that were to come up, because while this does add a lot of playable hours, it doesn't actually add to the recreational field footprint in town. And I know how difficult that sounds like it's going to be, but you know, I wouldn't want to say, okay, well, now that we've done this, we'll never be able to do anything on the recreational side anymore. So that would be the one concern that I have. But overall, I do support the project. I think it's going to do a lot for our town, and I think it'll be a source of pride for the kids in the school.
Certainly. Thank you, Steve. Okay, so I'm going to go to Mike Langley, then to Josh. Pri, I see your hand up. And then whoever's on the attendees, if you want to start raising your hands, we'll jump to you guys as well. If you have a question or a comment, we're going to give you 2.5 minutes. Alex, is that what we said? 2.5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so 2.5 minutes for the attendees. So let's go ahead and jump. Priya, we're not going to miss you before we jump out of here. Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. All right. So I'm Mike Langley. I'm one of the resident members, and I am. Look, I know the importance of more playable hours, and I want more fields. I went to Glenwood, Milburn Middle, Milburn High School. When I was on the freshman lacrosse team, we played on the parking lot behind Saks Fifth Avenue. So I know, right? We need more fields. Coming into this meeting and from the previous meeting, I was pretty leery about how much of a chunk of the fund we were going to dedicate to this project, just because, like what Deborah was expressing and like what Steve was expressing, not being able to predict the future, I don't want to dedicate too much of our purchasing power to potentially being able to make big moves down the line. I want to keep listening to what everyone's saying. Depending on what the obligation looks like, if we're thinking 5, 10, 15, 20, I could see supporting using some trust fund for this, but I want to hear more. I want to see where we land. In my head, an ideal outcome would be some mix of the 50 DOE or 50 BOE and some Gen Fund and some open space trust fund, just because this is the first project that we are planning on funding, and it is a significant one. It is an important one, but I want to make sure that we are just in balance with the 5 objectives of the trust fund. So I'm at this point, I'm listening, and if the number is low enough, then I'm supportive.
All right, fantastic. Josh, then thank you, Mike.
Hi, thanks, Chairperson Stoller. I'm Josh Ryder. I serve on the Rec Commission in town, and I'm the Rec Commission representative here for the Open Space Preservation Fund Committee. And so, I guess a couple of things. One, I'm listening to what everybody's saying, and I hear comments that along the lines of, is this going to benefit the majority of the people in town, or is it going to only benefit a small number of people in town? And, I think there is no perfect project. I think even if we talk about the Exxon station over in the corner of, Milburn, right by Vauxhall, if we were to do something there, are we going to get complaints from the folks over in Hartshorn and back of Deerfield saying, well, that's not really going to affect me. That's so far away. Like, I don't think that that's worth us funding. And I say that because, and people might be like, well, that's ridiculous. Everybody would benefit from that. But I mean, I want to give you the idea that when I was scheduling Milburn Soccer Club practices, I would get complaints from folks that they didn't want to drive to Slayton Field because it was too far. And so these are people that live in our township. And I mean, nothing is really more than 5 to 10 minutes away. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that someone could complain that they're not getting the benefit of, something that's on this corner of town versus this corner of town, or that my child doesn't involve themselves in this, or I don't there is no perfect project. And when you look at this project, it does affect a lot of people. And I think in listening to what some folks have said, and I've been pretty vocal about the fact that when things get rained out and kids can't participate, or even adults can't participate, I coached one of the women's softball teams here in town for the recreation department, and more than half the games were canceled last season. I mean, that's a pretty high percentage of games to be canceled, and that's because we just had an excessive amount of rain on Tuesdays and Thursdays last spring and summer. But I've been pretty vocal about the fact that when things get canceled, our kids, obviously are disappointed when they can't participate. And where do they go? If you think that they're going and then they're, going and jumping into their homework, or they're going to go do just something else active inside, that's probably not true. What they're going to do is they're likely going to get on their device and on their screen, and they're going to spend a lot of time doing that. And I think that it's very hard for me to find anyone who's ever disagreed with me that that's not what we want our kids doing. We do not want them on Instagram and TikTok and doing all those things. This is not what we want. And if this is going to benefit us with more playable hours, and it's going to allow the kids to play, and it's going to allow you just less rainouts, then I don't see any detriment to that. And so, just from a playable hours perspective, just for getting kids out there, I think that Steve was talking about earlier, fresh air, being outside, all of that, it's pretty obvious. There's been some talk about extreme heat and whether this is safe with extreme heat. I will tell you, I had 2 girls go through Milburn schools played all seasons of sports. Both of them played all 3 seasons. 8 years of playing outside in the fall and in the spring. That would be at the end of August into September, and then in the late part of the school year as well, which would be the hottest times during the school year for our, for this community. Never once was anything canceled or whatever because of extreme heat. And when we hear about 150 degrees on the turf, yeah, I mean, that is true if you live in Las Vegas or in Death Valley and you have a turf field, but that's not happening at an 8 a.m. practice for Milburn High School soccer or Milburn High School field hockey or lacrosse. It's just not. And so I don't want people to think that all of a sudden we're going to be putting kids into a situation where they're going to be running the risk of heat exhaustion from 150-degree turf fields. That's just not going to happen here in Milburn. We just don't live in an area where it's going to get that warm. And I also, I think this was also a huge point that was made, and I thought it was, and it wasn't being cute at all. I think it was smart. Is when the presentation was made, and Priya was actually one of the people that made the presentation on the Open Space Trust Fund, and I was a big supporter of it. Obviously, voted for it. Am a supporter of it now. Supported it while on the Rec Commission, all on the record. I will say that one of the things in the slides that was presented was that the funds could be used, and it was specifically delineated for lighting. I mean, it says it on the slides in the presentation and the presentation that was put out publicly that the funds would be used for lighting fields. So I don't think that there's any dispute and should be any dispute by any member of this committee that we wouldn't use those funds when that was the whole premise and what was presented to everybody when they voted on it. And it obviously won with overwhelming support. And I get, like, there's all kinds of nuances. It's the first project, is it real? Is this open space? I've heard arguments about institutional. And the bottom line is, when you just break it down with, hey, we presented this to you. This was the referendum. We asked you to vote on it. Here's exactly what we said it could be used for. And here we have a situation where we can actually use it. There should really be no dispute. We should just be using it. And I get that it's a large chunk of money. I'm not in any way discounting that. But I think we've also just heard it's not as large as may have been proposed or may be floated out there or some of the propaganda that's out there. It's less. I think that it's certainly in that workable area. I would be a person who would definitely take notice if it was 50 or 60%. I would probably sit back and think about whether it makes sense to fund at that level. But when I hear high teens and 20% and it's for lighting and it's for the fields, I'm having a hard time hearing anything that's negative. And so when I say that, I want to make sure that we look at this from and this is just from layman's terms or from the public's perspective, like, when you present something and you delineate and you vote on it, and now you have an opportunity to do it, I can't see why we wouldn't. It just doesn't make any sense why we would stop now. And the fact that it's going to be replenished within the next, I don't know, it's probably 60 days or 45 days, we're going to get more money into it. It's going to double the amount that we were. So now that percentage, and I know we talked about it's X percentage per year, but first year we didn't even do anything. And one thing that I've learned is that when you have reserves and you have money sitting around, that can aggravate people in town more than anything. Because it's like, hey, you asked for this money. You told us what you're going to use it for. Here is a proposal to do it, and you didn't do anything with it.
Right,
that's worse. Right. So I don't want to go on too long. I don't know if you're looking to cut me off. But I support the project in full. I think that at the level we're talking about, it makes sense. And I think it's the right thing for our community, and I think it's the right thing for everyone, and kids, adults, and really everyone. So,
right.
Appreciate your time.
Josh, thank you so much for that. And you brought up a risk that really has not been discussed yet, and that's a risk that residents just don't want to do it because the money's sitting in a bank account and not doing anything. That's a risk to everyone. That's a risk to our environmental goals going forward that we don't invest in these fields and get the recreation and the lights that were promised for the playability for our children. That's the bigger risk to me, is that there's a push to say, hey, if you're not going to invest in recreation, why did we vote for this? And it goes the other way. So thank you for bringing that up, Josh. We have to also pay attention to that. Priya, you wanted to circle
Well,
back your hand.
Ben, before you go to Priya, and I'm not trying to cut Priya off. I just want to say one other thing, because I want to make sure that I say this.
Sure.
And I did speak at the TC meeting on Tuesday, and I want to reiterate this on the record here, that it is paramount and imperative that safety is put first. I don't want anyone to think that if there's an inkling that this is unsafe in any way, then that I can't imagine that the 5 people that sit on the TC would support it, or the people on the BOE would support. I mean, like, nobody is going to just recklessly support something that could put people in danger. And I think we have to really consider the fact that it would be, no one's that irresponsible, and I can't imagine that, the mayor's on here and the former mayor's on here. I mean, like, none of these people are ever going to do that. And
Right.
so let's just be realistic when we, and I want to make sure that people understand that is still paramount and that is still imperative.
Right, Josh, that's a great point. And at the TC meeting, I actually said this: Brown University, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, UPenn, Princeton, Yale, Milburn, Livingston, West Orange, Summit, Chatham, Madison, and then we had a whole host of private schools: Pingree, Kimberly, Montclair, Kimberly, et cetera, et cetera. You know what they all have in common? They have turf fields. And they've been able to get comfortable with any risk of turf. And in fact, somebody sent me a report from 2 days ago where the state of California, and I think I sent that to you guys in an email as well. The state of California deemed it as safe, that turf fields were safe, et cetera, per that write-up. And I think I sent it to everybody. Thank you, Josh. So just in the interest of time, Priya, did you still have your hand up, or did you want to rebut something or come back?
No, I'm good. Steve had mentioned something, and that's why I raised my hand, because I just wanted to kind of piggyback on something that he'd said. It was more related to process, which I think I can share after we kind of go through this discussion.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so now I think we're gonna jump into some comments from the attendees. If you do want to speak, you should have your hand up, and then it'll be 2.5 minutes. Alex, from a procedural standpoint, I can name the attendee and you could open them to speak. Is that fine?
That's fine.
Okay, good. So let's see.
And I'll keep the timer, Ben, just so that's fair for everyone.
All right, very good. I appreciate it. Thank you. Let's jump on here. Let's start with let's just do it in the Odarka Stockard. Hey, Odarka. Let's open her up.
So just so everyone knows, we're just going to allow the individual to talk. They will not be brought on as a panelist.
All right, and we won't respond. We'll respond to everything at the end if anybody wants to make any responses.
Go ahead, Odarka.
Great, thank you. I wanted to say that I checked on your websites, and I don't know if I missed this, but I could not find a form to submit a proposal or a deadline or the rubric that you were using last week. That's just a comment. Okay, so I want to remind you what we voted for. And we voted for acquire, develop, and maintain land for the purposes of conservation and recreation. Okay, that's number one. The second one was acquire and maintain historic land. And I'm not going to go through all the whole list of things. Those were the 2 things that we voted for, regardless of what anyone talked about a long time ago. What I would like to see is some of this money to go to flood mitigation projects that would propose land acquisition of flood-prone areas, primarily for the purpose of mitigation, water retention, open space for public usage such as walking trails, farmland, playing fields, and recreation. But I think that it's like I want to provide money almost to the flood mitigation people, so they would be able to respond to opportunities. I wanted to also mention that money spent on land and property acquisition serves a double bounty to us, because we not only preserve the land, but we prevent development that all of us are sick and tired of. If that doesn't appeal to you, I want to suggest that you think about potentially splitting your funds 3 ways, for example, and maybe the funds would be split like conservation, recreation, and what's the third one? Historic, or some kind of formula that would kind of represent what we voted for. And I think that's what I really wanted to maintain is that whatever you do, it needs to be in the spirit and the intent of the law that we passed. And covering open space with artificial turf with all its issues. And by the way, the women risk ACL 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, depending on the sport, times more risk to women athletes. And I say that as a woman who is a young athlete and who has an ACL myself, and I now have arthritis from it. Please remember the women.
Thanks. That's time, Odarka. Thank you.
Thank you, Odarka. Renee Preparing. Hello, Renee.
Oh, Ben. Okay, so unquestionably, we need more fields. And this field project is going to go forward even without using open space trust fund money. Ben, you said today, and I've heard at township committee meetings in the past, that Millburn is in great financial situation. But to say that the recreational fields were by far the most talked about use of the open space trust fund money prior to the referendum moving onto the ballot. And I am talking about information sessions. Priya gave them, I attended them. The recreational fields and all monies going to Park and Rec was actually a great concern. There wasn't one information session that I was present at where people, all ages, didn't raise their hand and express concern that the focus of the fund monies would be spent on Park and Rec. And the concern was, why? Because our tax dollars are going to Park and Rec projects anyway. I'm not saying that they're not legitimate projects pursuant to the Open Space Trust Fund. I'm just saying that you really need to understand, and unless you were present and interacting with the public, people were very concerned that this is exactly what was going to happen with the money. The project needs to happen. And I also want to say, I mean, Ben, you're talking a lot about artificial turf here, and that is not what the Open Space Trust Fund, what you're here to decide today. But please don't be misled to say that by far the most talked about and the greatest reason that people voted for the Open Space Trust Fund was for fields or for anything Park and Rec. That was a fear. So the project will go forward without the Open Space Trust Fund money because unquestionably we need more fields. That is just the clarification that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Let's jump to Vanita. Hey, Vanita. Hi, Vanita. You there?
Hey Ben, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Vinita Gangwal, resident of Millburn, and I'm here to, represent Millburn Climate Action Group. You heard from some of those members in the prior meeting as well. And I heard some comments about, some people acknowledged a concern about using open space trust money or frankly, any public taxpayer dollars for use of artificial turf. Putting that aside, I think I just want to bring to all of your attention that there is a petition that Millburn Climate Action started just a week back with, we already have 240 signatures. And the issue right now is not which pool of money is going to be used for this proposed plan. The whole issue is the proposed plan seems to be not well thought out and well researched, and it does not provide a comparative analysis of artificial turf versus better managed natural turfs versus hybrid options. So I heard Ben speak about, per playable hour cost between artificial versus natural turf. Again, we have not seen any analysis. I just heard about it just now. So it would be appreciated if we can see that. Second thing, there are just a whole bunch of other issues when we think about making a decision of this size, the public taxpayer dollars. And again, we talk about $200,000 or $300,000, 10% of the open space trust money on a yearly basis, but that's not the issue. Issue is this cost of converting to artificial turf is over $7.5 million. And it will only last about 8 to 10 years. So we'll be talking about it every 10 years, digging into open space trust money. And if you just amortize the CapEx over 8 years, you're talking about $1 million in cost. And of course, if you add on financing and other things, that just adds up. Second thing is, it is repeatedly said that natural turf costs a whole lot more to maintain. First of all, again, that hasn't been proven. But if it is just park that thought for a moment. If that's the case, then I would think that would be a better use of open space trust money. Use that money to maintain our turfs the way they are presently in their natural state. Use them to enhance playability as well as preserve our ecological benefits for the community. So that would be a good use of open space trust dollars. And the last thing I'd like to say on behalf of Millburn Climate Action and other people who have started this petition, we are not against the fields. Nobody's saying don't use public taxpayer dollars to enhance field access. By all means, use it for lighting. The issue at hand is this, from our perspective, just not well thought out decision to convert to artificial turf, which is irreversible, which is just against, really the where our state is headed. There's a proposal in the state legislature against artificial turfs. And there's just a whole bunch of studies out there about the ecological impact. So thank you. Thanks,
Thank you, Vinita. Thank you. Let's jump to Lee Kirschbaum. Hey, Lee. You're muted.
How about now?
There you go. We hear you.
The COVID days. So good afternoon. My name is Lee Kirschbaum. I'm co-president for Millburn Soccer Club. So I'm representing an organization that serves about 550 travel players and several hundred more who participate in camps and clinics. And every year, we're responsible for nearly 1,000 Millburn children. Right now, we're not managing a program. We're managing a constant state of crisis. And just to be blunt, we're at a breaking point. I think Josh at one point had mentioned this at the public comments. Every season, what it was Josh and now it's us, we're basically begging for fields. And so while I hear people mention that they're not opposed to the fields, the reality is we just don't have them, right? And so someone mentioned 16% field deficit. I actually think it's optimistic. It doesn't account for the constant rainouts that spike. We really just don't have playable fields. And so even when we're granted the access, the conditions are unplayable. Anyone who can go out and visit Glenwood today, the high school today, Hartshorn today, you'll see that the fields, you can't play on them most days. And I'd say the fields are in the worst shape out of any other town we visit. We typically cancel practices. We'll switch from home games to away. Storms come and we have to move the entire week. And so I'd say we're not in a great place, and nothing but good happens when our kids are participating in sports. And so we get that there's a debate around turf, but we need to be clear. For the high school backfields, turf is the only viable solution. We've looked at other options. We brought up par 3. They just don't work for this need. And with the water table and the drainage challenges at the high school, you can't put new grass in there and get a good use of the resources. It won't survive given the volume of play. And from our perspective, turf is the only way we can turn a part-time weather-dependent patch of mud into 365-day community asset. And from our perspective, the Open Space Trust Fund is the perfect way to fund this. We've got existing funds that ensure that taxpayers aren't impacted, and we finally solve a problem that has been years, if not decades, in the making. It coincides directly with the open space element of our master plan. It honors the mandate of our residents who specifically voted to fund to improve and develop our rec spaces. And so for the first time in many years, the rec department and the Board of Education are finally in lockstep on making this happen. It's a rare moment of civic alignment to solve a problem that's plagued our family for over a decade. And it's not just a soccer project, right? It's an infrastructure project that provides space for other growing sports like cricket and benefits the entire town. So we're asking that the committee recommend that the high school field to move forward with the high school field improvements using the open space funds. Without this, the deficit will continue to widen and finally reach a point we can't accommodate children. So let's stop making this a crisis. Let's start giving the kids a reliable place to play and something they deserve.
Thank you. You're on mute, Ben.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, and thank you for all you do for the community and 1,000 kids that we entrust to you every year. You and August. Thank you so much. Let's move to who else we got here? Judy. Judy, I don't see a last name.
It's your neighbor, Ben, Judy Christian.
Oh, hey, Judy. How are you?
I am okay.
Good.
I just wanted to add my voice to what Mr. Cosgrove said at the beginning. There are 128 acres. I can quote from the website, but you've probably read it. In a 2023 open space master plan identified some of the properties that could be purchased. And I don't know why those are not considered before this Fields project. I wanted to quote again from the township website, what are the benefits of open space? Preserving open spaces gives residents places to walk, bike, picnic, and enjoy nature. Open spaces provide homes for wildlife, reduce flooding, and improve air quality by filtering out pollutants. Green spaces muffle noise, pollution, and reduce heat island effect from asphalt and concrete parks. One of my problems with using the Open Space Trust Fund money for this project is because there's a difference between recreation and sports. And I kind of feel like this has totally been seen from the sports point of view. And open space includes recreation, but it seems to me that the Fields project is not really recreation, it's for sports and that targeted group, which is fine. But I really do believe that there will be limited access to the fields, extremely limited access for the general public. I just want to say, too, that I admire the diligence that will be done to search for the best materials for the fields. But personally, I'm against artificial turf. I'd like to speak perhaps for the voiceless, for the heartbreaking decline in bird population, for example, and how the nighttime light pollution will contribute to that travesty. And just respectfully, I'd like to caution members of the township and other committees against impatience or unintended arrogance when questioned about artificial turf, about people who need to know what materials will be used before this project is funded. Respectfully, I'd like to remind you that you serve the people of the town, and there are people in this town who come from backgrounds and places where they have witnessed and suffered devastating effects of plastics and industrial pollution, and are seriously engaged in efforts to leave their children, grandchildren, and all sentient beings a sustainable and healthy environment. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Judy. Always a pleasure. You always learn new things from you. Let's jump to Sam Schmidt.
Good afternoon. I'm Sam Schmidt. I've been here about 33 years, and I have all my children have gone through all the sports and used the fields, but some of the numbers that have been quoted don't seem to be quite accurate. First of all, I've learned that it could be divided between lights and turf, and I think someone spoke before about putting up lights might be a good use for it, but a turf field has an 8 to 10 year lifespan, and when you're talking about 20-year bond, you're talking about having a bond being paid off 10 years after the turf needs to be redone. So for a 10-year bond, then you're talking about $550,000, and then you're talking about a much larger percentage. So while if with the lights were funded, then you're talking about a number about 25% or a little bit less. But with everything being funded, you're talking about 50%. So I think that that's a bit troubling when you're talking about numbers that really don't match the lifespan of what work you're doing. It also that the playability part, it seems to me that when you talked about those vastly different numbers, the playability is that part of that is having lights and being able to use the field at night, which I apparently wasn't calculated into the non-turf field. And so that's sort of also a number that doesn't seem to be a quite accurate number. And it does seem to be sort of kind of rushed here. I appreciate being able to speak today, having learned about this problem only a few weeks ago. But it seems that spending all the money or for both the field and the lights doesn't seem to be necessary, and maybe shouldn't really come from the open space fund money. That some of it should come from our general revenues, and some of it from then open space. Having the lights, I can understand, has the purpose of opening up to everybody for much longer. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Sam. All right, few more here. Let's go to JP. Is JP?
Sorry, Dean Pasternak. Sorry about that. I wanted to make a couple quick comments. Very thoughtful commentary from everybody here. It's really impressive. I'd like to just speak to the notion, I think that Brad brought up, that not every family participates in sports. Well, we have like 5,500 families in the town. I would have to think that probably half at least have their kids at some point in their lifetime here participating in sports. I had 4. One went on to be a college athlete, but the others just really got a lot out of being on a team, getting to know people that way. They all mostly attended private school, so it was a really good way for them to connect to our community, and me too, as a parent. So I'm a very strong supporter of our sports programs here in town. I would also like to say about the money and the funding. I brought this idea up at the last meeting, and I think it's valid. There was a Millburn Sports Activity Foundation set up, I think, in about 2008, and that was a $2.5 million raise for the Miller Field. Ted Burke, who was the former mayor, he was the one behind that. I love his quote. I hope the project stands as a testament of what can be accomplished if the community stands behind it. Don't question if you can do something, but how you can do it. And I think it's just about how. If money is a problem, we have from professional athletes that have graduated from our programs to families in town, I'm sure would be very happy to donate and be part of making this a reality. So I don't think that idea should be put off the table at all. I certainly would be interested in contributing and helping in any way I could, but I think there are people that know how to do this in our town and would do it well. The other thing I wanted to say about the $2 million that's sitting there, When I was on the Board of Education back in 2011, there was like a $12 million surplus, and we got a lot of heat for having that money just sitting there. So I do think there is very, very important point to be made that money shouldn't just sit idle. It's been collected from taxpayers. How it's used, again, that's up to the majority here, but I do believe that it should be used. And time is of the essence. This has been talked about for 20 years, getting field space. And I think we have to do something about it. I was also convinced by comments made by Charles Bambera at the TC meeting last Tuesday about flood mitigation. He said that with a synthetic turf, there would be much better chance of doing something about flood mitigation in that area. And I think that's something important to put forward. And lastly, I want to give a lot of praise to Renee and Priya. They did an excellent job when they went around last year, promoting the idea of doing open space. And I don't think it's fair to say that people were in some way misled or didn't understand. I think everybody just heard what they heard and looked at it from their own lens. So I think that we talked about this, Priya and I, that, it's like you have to get the best alternative to a negotiated agreement here. Not everybody's going to be happy, but most people get something. And I think that's where it seems to be leading. So I applaud my fellow commentators here and this committee and also our township committee for pushing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Jean. Okay. We got Jeff Feld. You might be on mute.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. First, now I really feel old because I think I coached Mike Langley when I was in rec. I think he graduated with my son and with what was it, Schmidt's son. So that tells you how old I am. No one disputes the need for fields. It's the question of how we fund it. And one of the issues is, part it's going to be open space. Some's going to be private contributions. But also, we really haven't been focusing on the open space grants from the county. This is the time we go to the county and ask them for contributions to this through their open space county fund and through the state. And to do that, and this is something that I've been raising as a legal issue, and earlier Dave Cosgrove talked about it, is the word of acquisition. And I'm just wondering whether we have to restructure this deal that is a lease agreement with this Board of Education rather than a joint use issue that'll give us the access to use and to go to the state and to the county for open space monies to reduce our amount. When we talk about the funding, there's a piece that I don't think we've really been focusing on it. The Board of Education's piece, they're going to say they're going to take it out of their capital reserve fund. But at some point, they're going to have to reimburse it. And that's going to be issuing when they have to do a bond referendum. So there will be a taxpayer consequence on the other side. And I think we should be working together to figure out a way to fund it. And I think the issue that I've been hearing today is how much will be coming out of the open space fund. I don't think anyone disputes that a portion will come out, but it's the question of what is that quantity and what is that amount. And please listen to what Mr. Schmidt said about useful life. When we do if we go into the bond market, the useful life might be blended, but because of the turf fields, it will affect the life of your bonds. And that's a factor that should be considered. And then you get advice from your bond counsel as to that. But this project will go forward. It's just a question of finding out the proper and equitable, fair way to fund it. That's my comment. And I can't believe how old I am that we're passing the torch to a different generation, Mike Langley. Welcome to the fight.
Thank you, Mr. Feld. It's funny too, on the train going in this summer, a kid that I coached when he was in 8th grade was going into his first job on Wall Street, and it really does make you feel a little bit old. Mr. Stoller, how are you? So that's good. So it looks like we have Jerry Kung. Jerry?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. I really appreciate all of the very thoughtful and insightful things everyone has said on the call so far. I may have missed it in the financial presentation earlier, but I think it was mentioned in an earlier meeting. The fields themselves, if the project goes forward, they do generate some amount of revenue when they can be used for sports clubs. Is that correct? Because if so, that revenue might be able to offset some of the financial obligations and might make it more financially sustainable. So I just wanted to make sure that point got addressed at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And that's exactly right. Those revenue generation opportunities would be used to build a trust to replace the fields. That's to address Mr. Schmidt and so forth and other folks who had that same question. All right, so it looks like all the hands have been raised. I thought I saw Bill Brazell in here, but he's no longer on here.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, Bill. He had his hand up the entire time, so it's just checking to see if he dropped off or if
Yeah,
he's
well,
going to get back.
let's give it 30 seconds, see if he comes back on. I always like to hear from Bill. And as we go through this, I don't want anybody to not have the chance or the opportunity to raise their hand and ask a question. And I think I'm looking at everybody's face on our team, and everybody seems to be taking in and learning a lot from this, so it's good. When we go back to
Sorry, Ben, he won't get back on. He had to drop off. So
Okay, no worries. Okay, good. So let's go back into the panelist. I want to welcome the mayor.
Ben, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you still have one hand raised in the.
No, I think that's the mayor. It's the mayor was going to come in as a panelist to discuss it with us. He had made that
okay.
So I'd like to go back to the panel.
Yeah, so
bring him in. Obviously sits at the top of our town. I'd love to hear some comments from him, and then we can go to any more discussion and go to a vote.
Okay.
Okay.
He's coming on now.
What's that?
He's coming on now.
Okay.
All right. Yep. Hello.
All right, good.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, just had a couple points that I wanted to make. So first off, Darka brought up a good point about flood mitigation. The Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee has actually been looking into potentially utilizing the area under where the proposed field project is going to be for some sort of stormwater detention. And you really can only accomplish that with an engineered solution using synthetic turf. So that's one of the advantages, and that would address, potentially some flood mitigation issues as well. The other thing I want to bring up, and some other people have touched on this, but the Open Space Trust Fund, when this went to referendum, it was really sold, and part of how it was sold was that it could be used for fields and it could be used for lighting the fields. And as Priya admitted, it's right in the slide there. And I do truly believe that the majority of people that voted for this had those fields and the lighting in mind when they voted for an increase in their taxes. And given that, and given the amount of money that we have in there, I think it would be a bit hypocritical for us not to utilize the Open Space Trust Fund to fund this project. Now, if we do a 20-year bond, then it's only going to take us, a portion of the Open Space Trust Fund. So we're going to have plenty of money left over to do other projects. And, I think this project is actually going to benefit a lot of residents. If you look at something like the Pocket Park that's being proposed, how many residents are actually going to use that versus how many are actually going to use these fields on a daily basis? So if we need to weigh that when we're making decisions, what's going to provide the greatest good for the greatest number of people? And then a lot of the other things that I've heard have been, resistance to using Open Space Trust Fund or any public funds for synthetic turf. And, people cite all sorts of reasons as to why synthetic turf is bad or is dangerous. But a lot of those reasons are based on outdated technology. The technology that we have available today is vastly different than what existed even 10 years ago. The heat issues that you had from the old school synthetic fields were mainly due to the rubber infill. We're not even looking at options that utilize rubber infill. And in fact, the options that we have available that either use no fill or use a natural, like a coconut husk fill, are 30 degrees cooler than the standard turf of yesteryear that used that type of infill. Additionally, California just did a study of 35 synthetic turf fields, and their EPA found no significant health risks associated with even the legacy technology. So the new stuff being even better, I really do think that the environmental risks that people are bringing up are not quite as serious as they're being made out to be. And we have some data that we can share and put on our website that talks about some of these studies and specifically about the PFAS and the lack of them actually leaching out of these newer materials. The other thing that I think we need to consider is that to Jeff and Dave's legal argument. Yeah, we are going to have an attorney take a look at whether we can utilize this funding. But I think that we could get around that pretty easily if we, either did a lease or if we purchase an easement. So if an acquisition is required, we could purchase an easement for, some or part of the fields, or maybe an easement for where we put the lights. I think we'd find a way to get around that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that when you guys are making your decision. That's something that we can have the township attorney figure out after the fact. But I think overall, this is a fantastic project. It is well suited for the use of open space trust funds, and you're not going to deplete the whole fund. If we go with the 20-year bond option, you're going to have plenty of money left over. So I would encourage you all to think through all of those things as you're making your decision.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, so as a team here for the Open Space Trust Fund Advisory Committee, I want us to provide a recommendation to the Township Committee. Ultimately, it'll be the Township Committee deciding on how to move forward, even to actually how to allocate the funds, etc. Alex, what's the best way to go about this? Being that I've not been on this committee, on a committee similar to this, to actually move that forward, to suggest just a vote on the Open Space Trust Fund Advisory Committee approving or giving an advisory consideration of yes to move forward with it.
Yeah, look, I think you probably need to come up with a motion and maybe allow others to make a motion to see what the vote is. Unfortunately, if there or you can just do where is there a vote to utilize, you can just keep it simple and say, is there a vote to utilize open space funds for this project? And a recommendation to the township committee to do such.
Okay. Does anybody have a problem with keeping it simple and moving this and having having a vote to move this forward?
I think Priya might have had something to say, and I just wanted to say something else as well.
Yeah,
but
just
I'll-
raise your
I had
hand
something
if
as
you
well.
have something so we could see it, because it's hard to see on this thing. There's a little thing that you can raise a hand, like Steve has his hand raised. Or
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Steve. So I just wanted to kind of draft off of what Frank had said about what was sort of advertised. And I think as Renee and I, when we were talking about this fund in the summer of 2024, it was it was overwhelming, the amount of feedback that we got from residents who attended public sessions that they wanted, these funds to not be used on recreation. And we always clarified that, again, in the state of New Jersey, this money can be used for recreation, for fields, and certainly for turf fields. So I just want to put that out there, because I just wanted, again, just to clarify that for everybody. Also, just as a matter of process, before we get into the voting to recommend, I think it's worth reminding the attendees that are here that there are representatives on this commission from all the various stakeholders. So there's Deborah from Environmental Commission, and there's Brad from Historic, and there's Josh from Recreation, because these are the three areas that this funding can, that this funding can go towards. So I think that if the first project out of the gate is going to focus solely on recreation, I think it's worth reminding attendees and reminding this group that maybe next time the priorities would be historic preservation, or the next time the priority would be environmental conservation or something that is under the purview of the Environmental Commission. So I just wanted to put that out there just as a matter of process.
Sure, Priya, thank you. And I went to a bunch of those information sessions as well as a township committee person advocating for this. And my recollection's a little bit different, is that recreation was a big part of it. There's 24,000 residents in Millburn Short Hills, and there's additionally, there's very a small amount of people at those information sessions. My take is that a majority of people voted for recreation as a way to solve the needs of our children for sporting and recreation, etc. And as to Dave's point before, whether it's turf or grass is superfluous. It's for recreation for our children. I think Steve had his hand up before Dave, but I don't know if Steve wanted to move it.
Dave can go ahead.
Okay, very good. Dave, please. Where'd he go?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good enough. Yeah, I lowered my hand once you called on me.
Okay, got it.
So to Alex's comment, I think, or Ben and Alex's, on the vote, I think we're at that point. I don't know that we should be, from what I'm hearing from people, that made comments. I don't know that this is just a yes or no. Yes, we think we can use it. I think it's got to be an amount, whether it's 15%, no more than 15, no more than 100,000. That's my only suggestion. And I don't know what everyone's thinking about that amount or percentage, but I'd rather see it addressed that way. And maybe, if people have a number in mind, maybe we just move till we get, a majority that all like, 15% or all like whatever that number is. But I don't know what the rest of the gang thinks or how they feel about how to process it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And listen, I think we saw at the 20-year bond, it's about 20% on a 20-year bond. And I think Priya also mentioned the 5 elements, or no, Deborah mentioned the 5 elements, and this is one element, which is 20%. So that might be a piece, but doing the project and moving it forward, I think, is where the vote's required. The Township Council will be tasked with how we move it forward and how it gets allocated, etc. So I would like to start. Steve, is your hand still up, or did you mean to take it down? Okay. It looks David's hand's back up.
Yeah, let Steve go first though, because
all right, yeah, I was gonna.
We've got hands flying everywhere.
Sorry about that. Yeah, there's all.
I want to say something quickly. First, and I'm not suggesting that anybody on this committee is trying to do this at all. I just want to make sure that, I really appreciate the residents who have come forward with environmental concerns, because I think, it's eye-opening for me, and it's great to see how concerned those people are. And I want to make sure that we're not vilifying them and saying that they're somehow against kids playing outside, because I don't think anybody in town is against kids playing outside. I think we all are, and that probably didn't need to be said, but I just want to make sure that the tone and the takeaway feels like, we're respectful and appreciative of those opinions. and those concerns, and I share them. But I also want to say that I know I brought up a point earlier, and I think some other people sort of came in on it, and Priya, maybe you were going to piggyback on it as well, is this question of whether it's possible to make a proposal that we fund the lights and do not fund the turf, given that, we're splitting the costs anyway. Board of Ed has already committed to half of it. We're only talking about funding half of it anyway. And, maybe that's a way for us to support the project of making sure that there's more field time without asking the town to get behind, the artificial turf, at least from a, township perspective, if the Board of Ed is going to pay for that. So I don't know if that's feasible. I don't know how the economics work, but just something to throw out there is, maybe that's worth pursuing.
Yeah, so Steve, thank you for that. Operationally, I don't know if that's even plausible. And we're not looking at turf versus natural grass. This isn't an environmental commission recommendation. This is a recommendation from the Open Space Tax Trust Fund, not from the Environmental Commission. The reason that this was structured like this was somebody from HBC, a resident. Alex has a vote here. The vice chair vote from the Township Committee. Priya has a vote here. It's all put together here to have everyone's input, not to renegotiate the transaction, Steve, or parse it up like that. It's simply to give a recommendation to the TC with all of our input, how we would like to see it proceed.
Okay. Well,
Okay, I see another hand up. Dave's hand's up again.
Mine's up, but Josh, I think, was up first. So maybe.
So
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, yeah. So I think it's risky. I'll tell this group. I think it's risky if we just were to say to the Township Committee, we're all right with the money being used. I think it has to be, in my mind, and maybe everyone disagrees with it, it has to come with a condition. We are all right with spending 15% or whatever that number is. I think there's a real risk that if this committee just says it's fine, that money may and I don't want to be mean to anybody, but that money may disappear instantly. Once the TC votes on this.
Well, how would you get to 15%, David?
15% sounds like a good number that gives us money that we can spend on other things that, frankly, to other people's comments, when I went to the meetings on this, I was very concerned that the money would be used for routine, items that the town normally would pay for. And to our brethren there about the fields, I am for this project. So this has, and we know it can get funded. So this is just it's just an argument of where that money comes from. It's not an argument in my mind or a thought in my mind that it's not going to happen. But I do think we need to give a hard number because I worry about what would happen if this committee just said it's all right.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow that what would happen, what possibly could happen, just so everyone on the committee.
Sure, the Township Committee votes to use all $2 million.
Well, the Township Committee can vote to do that at their own peril as well already, right? And that this recommendation has nothing to do whether they do that or not.
It would. I don't disagree with that, but if this, I worry about if this committee doesn't put some guardrails on it, even though that guardrail could arguably be disregarded.
Right, those are
that people just on the TC side just run with this and say, well, you know what? However many of there are, the 6 or 7 of us gave them the green light, and boom, let's use the $2 million.
Okay.
And then when we want to do projects that some people here feel are more appropriate for open space fund, then we don't have money or we're borrowing a ton of money to do it. So
understood.
Thanks.
Okay. And Josh, and then Deborah, and then we can move forward as it's getting late in the day as well.
Well, I don't. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Right when the mayor was finishing, my computer shut down, so I don't know what I missed. So if I'm repeating anything that happened in the last 8 minutes, I apologize, but I'm going to say just a couple things anyway. There were three things that I wanted to comment on, and now four after Committee Person Cosgrove's statement. First was about the the town people's concern with all the money going to recreation, and I think that I'm on the board of recreation, so I mean I'm certainly wasn't one of those people that was concerned about it, but during the presentation and on the slide, 5 out of 8 of the possible projects were part of town, parks and recreation, whether it was Giro Park or whether it was a Bauer Center or whether it was fields or whether it was lights. I mean, so it would make sense that somebody might say, hey, is this all going to go to rec? Well, when 5 out of 8 of the proposed possible projects that are actually being presented as part of the plan, I could see why that would have happened. Second was there were comments made about the amount of money that it is to, with the replacing of the field, and it's only 10 years. And let's just remember that the cost to replace or fix a field after it's been constructed is a lot less than building it new. And I just want to make sure that I don't know if that was said already, but it needs to be reiterated that once you have a field, and then yes, you do have to fix it. It has to pass GMAX tests and all this other stuff with it. That is less expensive than building it from scratch. So just it's not like, oh, we're going to go out and spend this money again, and it's the exact same amount, because it's not. And the third thing I want to talk about was there was mention about ACL injuries, and there's an article in the New York Times, and it was mentioned at the TC meeting on Tuesday. And I think it also, I have daughters that played sports. I have one that plays collegiately and plays on turf. And I think it just needs to be understood that part of the studies with female athletes and ACL injuries, many happen on grass. U.S. women's national team soccer players, many happen on grass. Basketball, Cameron Brink and some other athletes that don't, I mean, it's not just turf. A lot of ACL injuries happen with female athletes because of specialization in sports and not diversifying what they're playing and concentrating in one area. And so that's part of the reason why you're seeing a lot of ACL injuries, and also with female athletes, just in general, there seems to be more specialization in one sport. So I want to make sure, because that was mentioned in the articles as well. And then what Mr. Cosgrove said, I think it's important, this was something that I brought up during the presentation to the Rec Commission when the open space idea was presented, was how the funds were going to be spent and whether it was going to be just TC deciding. And it was explained to me that in the end, it might have even been you, Mr. Stoller, that said, hey, in the end, the TC decides where the money goes. Doesn't really matter. But I do think that what Mr. Cosgrove said is correct, is if we make a recommendation for a certain percentage, I think the TC would listen and say, hey, the Preservation Committee said we should spend 15%. That sounds like the right number. Let's do that. They wouldn't I don't think that 5 elected officials would just willy-nilly say, I don't really care what those people said. I'm just going to spend all of it. So that's why I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that would put some people in this room at ease. I think it might make a lot of people in the public be put at ease, so that we know that we're not dipping into high percentages. And look, if the TC decides to just do what they want, then that's on you guys. That's up to the 5 of you,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's why I meant at our peril, right? So the TC is going to vote at their peril if they want to go through with that. I said that to David prior. We have 2 hands up. Let's get through Deborah and through David. I think Deborah's hand up was up first. Go to Deborah, then back to David, and then we'll move forward. Oh, and now Priya's hands up.
I also agree that I shouldn't say I agree, but I would be more comfortable giving as much guidance as possible to the TC, given that that's my understanding of an advisory board. I wouldn't want to give it, just carte blanche. We've had a really robust discussion. I think it's been an important one. I think we were appointed to serve a purpose, and I would hate to just toss that aside by not giving some kind of more specific recommendation. I also think it feels like we moved to today. When we talked about doing a percentage, it felt like we kind of came together a little bit more, and it doesn't really make sense to me to just throw that away and just say, yes, go ahead and spend. So if we were to just say straight up yes or no, my vote would be no. If we were to say it's a percentage not to exceed whatever, 15%, whatever, then my vote would likely be very different. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Deborah. David?
Yeah, I'm willing to make, I don't want to cut Priya off because I saw her hand up, but I would just make a motion that the committee report to the township committee that we think it's a good idea to spend the money, but no more than 15%. And so I'd make that motion and let's see if we can get a second, but I don't.
Priya? Priya had her arm up. I don't think we have promotions yet. Let's go to Priya.
Really fast. I don't know if it sets good precedence for kind of going back and forth on percentages. I think we should just evaluate the projects before us and take a clean vote and then, go from there. That's just sort of my off the cuff thinking, because I think otherwise next time there's another proposal that comes around and we're going to be thinking 10%, 5%, 20%, like what's the number? And I think we should just evaluate the projects on their merits. First of all, did they meet the criteria? Can we actually, use open space money to fund them? Yes, no, and then go from there. We have a rubric in place. We're evaluating these proposals based on the rubric, which should be made public as soon as possible. And then we just, approach it that way. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Sitting here as chair, I've heard everything. I don't really disagree, Priya. I really don't disagree. However, Deborah made a very strong point on having a guardrail, and I think David made that point as well. I would like to make a motion to the committee here to vote on moving it forward with a 25% guardrail, that it can't be more than 25% of the fund of the current fund per annual calendar year, et cetera, from the collections. I'd like a second for that, and let's give that a round, see if we can get through here, get out of here, and wrap this up. Can I get a second on that? Josh, David, anybody?
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you, Brad. Alex, will you do the honors of going through and just doing a quick vote?
Sorry, clarify the
Yeah.
So would it be 25% of the current 2 million plus 25% of each million going forward?
No, each year.
Each
The
year.
$1 million. Yeah.
So $250,000 allocation per year.
But we currently have 2 million. What would happen with that?
Well, that would continue. That's still there for other projects, right? So you have you'd have essentially, what is that? 1.75 million that could be utilized for other projects.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd start funding the 20-year bond. If the TC decides to do a 10-year bond, they're on the hook for the difference. That's going to be our recommendation, right? So I think that's a nice happy medium, gets everybody on board and lets us move this forward. We've all heard from our constituents, from the residents. Everyone did a fantastic job of articulating their points, but we're up at 2 hours now. Let's try go see if we can get consensus and move this forward. I'd love to have everybody on board and go to the TC with a nice big thumbs up from this group. Go ahead, Alex.
So just to reiterate, the motion on the floor is that 25% of the annual allotment that comes into the fund each year be utilized for this project. That is not currently there's 2 million. It's only on the 1 million that would come in each year, or whatever that allotment is. Like this year it was 1,006,000. 6,000. So that's the motion. There's a second by Brad. I'll go around the room. David, you want to make a comment? That now would be the time that there's a second.
Yeah, just a clarification. When you're talking about 25% per year, are we talking for this particular project? Because I think we all know that down the road, there's going to be more money spent on this project in quotes. But so are you envisioning, or is Ben, when he makes the motion, envisioning 25%, which is $250,000 of the million, in perpetuity?
Yeah, as long as this open space tax trust exists to pay down the bond, all with a cap at the amount of the bond, right? So it just doesn't go on beyond that life. It can't.
Okay.
So
Okay.
essentially
And
based
also
on the project cost now.
Yeah,
Thanks for that clarification.
And the kiss up front, if you understand what I mean there, for Deborah and Priya and everybody else, is that, listen, we're still preserving 1.75 out of the 2 million that sits there. Only 250 of that's going to go for this year one towards it, and then go from there. So that's a nice kiss. All right, Alex.
All right. Good. I'll go through the attendees again with that motion on the table. I'm just going in order of as I see people. Priya Patel.
I need more time to think about this.
Okay. Come back to you then. Okay. David Cosgrove.
Yeah, I would say no to this. If it was a lower amount, that's better, but 25 is too rich. Thank you.
Yep. Steve Green.
I'll vote yes.
Deborah Nevis.
Yeah, I'm a no on 25%.
Yeah. Josh Ryder.
I'll support it at 25.
Brad Jenkins.
He might be on mute.
Brad, we can't
Did
hear
you
you.
not hear me? I'm a yes.
Okay. Mike Langley.
I would be yes.
And then Ben Stoller.
I am a yes.
And then back to Priya Patel.
No.
No. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses and 3 nos. As you can imagine, I'm going to abstain at this point, given the fact that the yeses have it.
Great. So the motion carries.
Motion carries 25%, and we will write that up and make sure that that recommendation is formalized to the township committee.
Thank you, guys. And team, listen, thank you so much. It was handled with such grace, professionalism, courtesy, civility, intelligence. Thank you all. David, thank you. Priya, Deborah, Josh, Brad, Mike, Matt, Steve, and Alex. I really appreciate it. Thank you for making this a robust discussion and a informative discussion.
And for all your time on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is
Thank
cutting
you,
into
Ben.
happy hour.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you,
Okay,
folks.
so
Thanks,
I'm
everyone.
gonna make a motion to adjourn. Second.
I'll second.
Aye. All in favor? Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.